Ever get that feeling? Like you're kind of walking through life, but not really steering the ship.
Yeah, I think we all have that feeling sometimes. Like you can picture this amazing life you want to create, but just can't quite grasp how to actually, get there.
Exactly.
Right.
Like the potential's there, but the instruction manual's missing.
Right. So that's kind of the space we're going to explore today. We've been diving deep into this Spotify podcast called Manifest Anything series.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one. Who are the hosts again?
It's hosted by these two longtime friends, Uick, and their story is really fascinating. They've spent years, navigating personal growth, going after their dreams here in America, building businesses.
Oh, wow. So they've really been through it.
They really have.
Yeah.
And they've explored all sorts of spiritual practices, too. So they're bringing all of this experience to bear on how they explain the law of manifestation. And what's cool is they make it really down to earth,
Yeah, it's not like some super esoteric out there stuff. It feels more like you're getting advice from friends who've actually experimented with these ideas, which is always more relatable.
Totally. And for this deep dive, we're focusing on two key concepts they emphasize: affirmations and these limiting beliefs that can kind of trip us up.
Okay, love that. So before we jump into those specifics, can you give us a quick overview of the podcast? What other kind of topics do they cover?
Oh, they cover a ton. I mean, just looking at their episode list, it's everything from past life regression, which is a whole other rabbit hole.
Whoa, past lives.
Ah.
Okay, got to hear more about that later.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to circle back to that one. But they also get into practical stuff like dealing with negative energy, understanding how luck works.
Okay, that's more my speed practical tips.
Exactly. And they even delve into the dynamics of relationships, like figuring out who the helpful people are in your life versus the unhelpful ones.
Ooh, that's juicy. So we've got affirmations, limiting beliefs, past lives, negative energy, luck, relationships. Sounds like they've got it all covered.
They really do. They take a pretty holistic approach, which I think is part of their appeal.
I can see why they've got such a following. All right, so let's dive into those core concepts you mentioned. Affirmations, what's the deal with those? Why are they so central to the whole manifestation thing?
Well, they really see affirmations as a foundational starting point, especially in episodes 13 and 14, where they really focus on this topic. They basically say that affirmations are a powerful tool for conscious creation because they help you consciously direct your mental energy toward what you want.
I think I get the general idea, like repeating positive statements to yourself to kind of reprogram your thinking. But how does that actually work?
Their core insight is that on a really basic level, our minds are kind of operating in one of two modes, either creating or stopping creation.
So either you're moving towards something you want or trying to avoid something you don't want.
Yeah, exactly. It's like wanting something versus not wanting something. And here's where it gets interesting. They say that using negative phrasing like don't want, cannot, or bad can actually create conflict within that framework.
That makes sense. So instead of giving your mind a clear direction, you're kind of creating this internal friction. Like you're still focusing on the thing you're trying to avoid rather than purely on what you do desire.
Exactly. And in episode 14, they give some really practical advice on crafting affirmations that really resonate with you, personalized to your own goals and desires. They use this example of creating money because it's something most people can relate to.
Right. So is it just a matter of repeating money flows to me easily 100 times a day? What's their take on that?
Well, they caution against just using any old affirmation you find online. They say it's got to feel authentic and believable to you. And they even mention this simple but powerful technique involving paper and pen for taking the affirmation, I am rich, to a deeper level.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What's the deal with the paper and pen?
So they don't get into all the specifics in the excerpts we have, but they really emphasize the act of physically writing out the affirmation as being key.
So it's not just thinking it or saying it out loud. It's the physical act of writing that kind of seals the deal.
Yeah, it seems to add this extra layer of intentionality, maybe even making it more tangible for the mind. And get this, they also offer what they call plug-in affirmations.
Plug-in affirmations, what are those?
They're like ready-made phrases designed to help cultivate a healthy and abundant mindset at the subconscious level.
So they're like these pre-programmed mental templates you can kind of just plug in and start shifting those deeper beliefs.
Smart.
Exactly. It's like a shortcut to start influencing those deeper patterns of thought. And they really emphasize how valuable these two episodes on affirmations are. They really encourage listeners to, soak them up.
That's great advice. It sounds like a must listen for anyone who wants to be more deliberate about what they're attracting into their lives. But now we've got to talk about the flip side, those limiting beliefs you mentioned. What's their take on those? Right. So in episode 5, they really dive into this idea of limiting beliefs and how we often unknowingly create these boundaries for ourselves.
So it's like self-sabotage.
Yeah, in a way. They frame manifestation as this two-part process. It's not just about attracting and creating the things you want. It's also about debugging your internal system.
Debugging. So it's like identifying and fixing the errors in our mental programming. Love that analogy.
That's exactly it. They're talking about those thoughts, often subconscious, that can really hold us back, like old conditioning, outdated habits, fears, doubts.
All that baggage we carry around without even realizing it.
Exactly. And those beliefs can create this feeling of scarcity or limitation, even if it's not really true. It's like trying to drive with the parking brake on. You might move forward a little, but you're never going to reach your full speed.
Ugh, that's the worst feeling. So how do we debug ourselves? What's the solution?
Well, and this is the really empowering part. They say that simply recognizing those subconscious barriers is often the most significant step towards breaking free.
Wait, really? Just becoming aware of the limiting belief is enough to start weakening its grip?
That's the idea. They believe that once you shine a light on it, it loses a lot of its power. And they even encourage listeners to share the limiting beliefs they've uncovered.
That's a cool idea, like a collective mental decluttering session.
Exactly. And it creates this sense of shared learning and growth.
Okay, I'm loving this. Now, you mentioned earlier that they cover a pretty diverse range of topics on this podcast. What are some other highlights that we should touch on?
Sure. Well, in episode 9, they talk about dealing with negative energy, particularly that coming from external sources. They offer some practical techniques for avoiding or minimizing that negative energy to help you maintain a more positive and balanced state.
Oh, I definitely need to check that episode out. Feeling drained by negative energy is a real struggle for a lot of people. What kind of techniques do they suggest?
Well, the specifics vary, but the general theme is about setting energetic boundaries, being more mindful of your environment, and using different practices to cleanse or transmute that negative energy. They really emphasize being proactive about protecting your personal energetic space.
That makes a lot of sense, being intentional about what you allow into your field, so to speak.
Exactly. And in episodes 7 and 8, they talk about increasing luck, which I thought was really fascinating. They don't believe that luck is entirely random. They link it to this concept of merit.
Merit, huh? Like doing good deeds.
Yeah, potentially. Or just generally being in alignment with positive principles. They also talk about effective ways to make wishes, suggesting that your intentions and the energy you put out into the world really do influence the outcomes you experience.
Okay, so it's not just about crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. It's about actively engaging in ways that create more favorable conditions.
That seems to be their perspective. And they offer some practical guidance on aligning yourself with what they believe are the underlying dynamics of good fortune. And they have this really compelling discussion in episode 6 about helpful people and unhelpful people in our lives.
That's an interesting distinction. What's their take on that dynamic?
Well, they talk about how recognizing those different types of people in our lives can be really valuable for our growth. They even mention this concept of adversity quotient, which is essentially your ability to bounce back from challenges.
Oh, resilience.
Yeah, exactly. And they suggest that even the difficult people in our lives, the unhelpful ones, can provide opportunities for developing our resilience and learning valuable lessons.
It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right. And in episode 4, they delve into the inner child and this journey toward your authentic self. They share some really personal stories from their own lives, including experiences with bullying and how shifting their perspective on those experiences led to significant personal growth and healing.
That's got to be a powerful episode exploring how our past experiences, especially those early childhood ones, shape who we are today.
It is. And then, of course, there's their exploration of hypnotic regression in episodes 10, 11, and 12, which takes things to a whole other level. They share their own experiences with past life memories, including this really intriguing detail about White potentially being a famous courtesan in a past life.
Wait, a courtesan? Wow, talk about a plot twist.
Right. And they also talk about this idea of creating new inner memories to help balance out past experiences. And they even share some pretty unusual experiences like encountering a Galactic Federation Command headquarters during one of their regressions.
A Galactic Federation Command headquarters. What in the world? Okay, now my curiosity is officially piqued. I'm definitely adding these episodes to my listening queue. But zooming back out for a minute, what are some of the most important takeaways for our listeners? Especially those who are looking for those aha moments, that quick but thorough understanding understanding of the key principles without getting bogged down in all the details.
Right. Well, when it comes to affirmations, the core takeaway is the power of intentional, positively framed language to shape your internal state. They really emphasize being mindful of that wanting versus not wanting dynamic we talked about earlier. So making a conscious effort to focus on what you do desire, phrased in a positive way.
Right, so minimizing those internal contradictions.
Exactly. And with limiting beliefs, I think the biggest takeaway is that so many of the limitations we experience are self-imposed and often operating beneath our conscious awareness. They believe that simply bringing those beliefs to light can be a huge first step in releasing them.
Like shining a light on the monster under the bed, it's suddenly not so scary anymore.
Exactly. And their broader discussions really underscore that manifestation is an active process. It's not just about wishing and hoping. It involves consciously managing your energy, understanding the dynamics of your relationships, and even engaging with your past in ways that support your present and future aspirations.
That's a really empowering message that we have more agency than we often realize when it comes to creating the life we want.
Absolutely. They really drive home the point that even in areas that might seem outside of our control, like luck or challenging relationships, there are things we can do to shift the odds in our favor.
So for all of you listening out there, I want you to take a moment and consider one recurring thought or belief you have about yourself or your capabilities. Is it possible that this thought is actually a limiting belief, something you've just accepted as true for a long time without really questioning it? And if so, what's one small affirmation you could start using, even just mentally, to gently shift that perspective towards something more positive and empowering? It might seem like a tiny step, but as Sue's suggesting, even a small shift in your thinking can be the spark that ignites the process of manifesting the life you truly desire. And hey, maybe grab a pen and paper while you're at it. Putting those affirmations in writing might just amplify their power.